Hello, my name is Jacob Toddson, and welcome back to the Wisdom of Odin. Today, I'm in Sedona. Now, when people picture Sedona, this is a pretty similar view. Very beautiful vistas, red rock mountains. But something that spiritual people might recognize is Sedona being tied to spiritual vortexes, and a lot of ley line activity here as well, and UFOs. And so I've heard of Sedona for some time, and I recently had the ability to come here and explore it for myself. And so I really wanted to use this time to make a video and reflect on Sedona. As an American and being in Arizona and being in America, it can be sometimes hard to find spiritual places simply because we don't have as much written record of the ancient past, and obviously a lot of it has been destroyed. But Sedona has been a place that spirituality seems to have thrived. And so I really just want to share with you my explorations of this place. There are 4 major vortexes here, and I plan on exploring each one of those being Cathedral Rock, Bell Rock, Airport Mesa, and the Cow Pies. And there are other spiritual vortexes here, and I've explored a few of them, and there's also Boint Canyon, I believe. And so there's quite a few here, and I'm going to share with you my reflections after visiting each one, but also just trying to explore Sedona in general. And so this video really is like a coming out of hibernation for me. I haven't made a video in a while, and that's mostly because I was leaning into winter. I needed to do a lot of reflection and meditation on where I want this channel to go. After nearly 6 years of making videos, I kind of just reached a burnout point. And so Sedona just felt like a really good place to reflect on my content creating life and what my videos are going to continue to be, but also reflect on my own spiritual journey and how crazy it's been. But with that, let's just go ahead and begin this video exploring the spiritual depth of Sedona, the good, the bad, the ugly, and ultimately the beautiful. Before the red rocks whispered to tourists and vortex seekers, they spoke to the indigenous peoples of America. This land was sacred ground to the Sonawa people, whose name means without water. Between 600 and 1400 CE, they built cliff dwellings and pueblos carved into the stone like prayers etched into time. They were farmers, traders, and sky watchers, living in harmony with the land's rhythms. Even earlier, the Hohokam and ancestral Puebloans moved into these canyons, leaving petroglyphs as markers of presence, not possession. And for the Yavapai and Apache who followed, these towering red rocks were not just scenery, they were storytellers, living memory, ceremony, and medicine. But as centuries passed and the old villages fell silent, by the late 1500s, Spanish explorers moved into these lands. But it wasn't until the 1800s, after the U.S. took control of Arizona, that settlers began to arrive. In 1876, a man named John J. Thompson became the first documented Anglo settler in the Oak Creek Canyon. He planted orchards where once there was prayer circles, and by 1902 the land was named Sedona, given in honor of the wife of a local postmaster. Dirt roads turned into pavements, ranches gave way to tourism, and by the 1950s, Hollywood films arrived like Broken Arrow and Apache, which turned these sandstone cathedrals into cinematic backdrops. And as the decades turned, the seekers followed, and by the 1980s, whispers of energy vortexes began to swirl, an idea birthed from mystics, intuitives, and those who felt called to this land. Sedona wasn't just beautiful anymore, it was magnetic, and a place where the Earth's energy, some said, spiraled into motion, awakening something ancient in those who came close. Today, beneath the yoga mats and camera lenses, the spirit of this land still breathes, quietly, endlessly, waiting, as it always has for those who remember to listen. So I definitely didn't pack well when choosing to come to Sedona at the beginning of March. I did not expect the snow, but it is really beautiful. So it's here on my first hike here in Sedona. This is Bell Rock here in the distance. This is the first vortex listed here as the major vortexes. And so I kind of figured I'd give you my first report, boots on the ground. What does it feel like? A lot of my comparisons, of course, have been to Glastonbury in England. And I think that's kind of natural. It's like the closest I've been to a place like this as far as a spiritual, hippie kind of place. Obviously, this is very different. So in the sense of Glastonbury is kind of built around the Glastonbury Tor, the one main feature of the town with the springs. Sedona more or less is, a road that goes through a very touristy area. Then the areas are quite vast and big. And I think that's where the energy vortexes kind of come in, is the fact that these areas are so vast, I think is the best word I have to describe it. Because you have Bell Rock over here, and we were kind of walking, and then we came over to, I think this is Courthouse Rock. I don't really like the names, they're very basic, but anyways, I was like in the middle of these rocks over here just a few minutes ago, and I think I kind of understood what they mean by vortexes. I guess when I was researching online and I was trying to figure out like what is Sedona and what are these energy vortexes, it's really hard to describe. And I really do think it is just the swirling of energy. I mean, hence the vortex name. And I think I can kind of feel it. It's hard to, obviously when you kind of set your mind to something and you're like, I want to feel this, it's really hard to kind of soak it in. But I do think I get it. I think because of the vastness of the nature here, I do feel very lucky, even though it's kind of hard to see in the distance, as you can tell. It's kind of hard to see. I haven't seen much of Sedona at the time of recording. It's either been dark or snowy. But I do feel very lucky that I'm seeing Sedona in such a unique setting, as such a unique time. So yeah, it's been really beautiful so far. I think if I were to say anything about the town itself, I definitely am starting to get the Glastonbury vibes. I went to like one of the cafes here, and the moment I walked in, it smelled like sweaty men and incense. And there's a bunch of people with dreadlocks. One person like in the corner with all the little crystals, like going through the crystals, and all of his like dreadlock friends were like, oh yeah, yeah, yeah. And then the coffee shop was like a vegan, earth-friendly, have a glass of fucking dirt coffee shop, which there's nothing wrong with that. It's just like there definitely is a stereotype when it comes to spiritual hippies, and those stereotypes definitely exist here. I would say I'm not much of a crystal person. I don't really quite get it. It's not my thing. And it seems like the crystal culture is really big here in Sedona. There's a lot of crystal stores, and a lot of people talk about crystals. It's at the forefront of a lot of conversations. One of the books I read before coming here talked very heavily about crystals and how crystals are connected to Sedona, connected to the spirituality here. I come at this place more from the shamanic perspective, more from the indigenous Native American perspective, looking at what they would have seen here. Cathedral Rock is called, in the native language, it translates to the sun god. And so that's something I've been looking into, is the Hopi legends and their connections to this place and why it was special. And so that's kind of more the lens I'm looking at, but there's definitely a lot of cheesiness here when it comes to the spirituality. I mean, I saw a place that literally had like aliens outside. So you have this mixture of like hippies, crystals, kind of probably racist Native American things, and then you also have the aliens as well. So it's definitely an interesting mix. Now, how's Sedona as a town? Well, it's a lot of this. So you can walk around Sedona, and it does take a little bit longer because the town is essentially divided into like 3 sectors. There's what's ahead of me, which is very touristy. There is the West End, which is more of the, I guess, the local area. There's a little bit more culture there. And then there's the southern area, which is like the little bit more expensive area. And it's all built around these roundabouts in town that really are everywhere. I mean, there's not a lot of road lights. There's a lot of traffic circles. And then you have like this kind of area up here that's like more fancy restaurants and stuff. And so it is a tourist town. And when exploring around, it's really hard to find like the locals. And that's simply because the locals, from what I can gather, for the most part, it's very expensive to live here. It's one of the most expensive real estate markets in America. And so, and when comparing this place similar to like Glastonbury, Glastonbury in England, as far as a spiritual place, is much smaller and it's much more affordable. Now, owning property in Glastonbury is still very expensive, but you can find Airbnbs, you can find rentals, you can camp. I mean, there's a lot of people who have very little money that stay in Glastonbury full time. They find a way. Here in Sedona, I think it would be very difficult to stay here full time. Now, I'm sure there's people that do, but I also know the summers are insanely hot here. And so actually staying here full time, I think is a little bit more difficult. So I think that's why Sedona really is a tourist town. A lot of the people that come here are tourists, and the people that do live here even live here seasonally. The town itself, there's great food, there's good people, it's just very expensive. And I think that's one of the deterrents from this place being truly like, steeped in the spirituality. I think it's missing a little bit of something as far as like the livability of Sedona. But maybe not every place needs to be livable. Perhaps this place is more of a pilgrimage site. Just expect to pay a little extra when you pilgrimage here to Sedona. So just to kind of show you, like here's that road right here. This is the one I was just on. And then over here is your mountain ranges. I mean, they're just absolutely all around the town here. And one thing I will say in the positive, even though it's very touristy, is the buildings are all very like intricately designed, and I know there's a lot of building codes to keep buildings to a very similar aesthetic. So I find the buildings here to be very unintrusive. And I think that's also one of the things that leads to the very expensive quality of Sedona, is there's a lot of rules and regulations to what you can build, and and there's a very limited space. Like, one of the things I noticed here is the parking lots are all super tiny, and so you can definitely tell that land is at a premium, but hopefully you can see why. Hey, it's me from the very beginning of this video again. I just wanted to drop in and say, if you're enjoying it, please make sure you do all that good YouTuber stuff. The stuff that kind of led to my burnout is constantly having to promote YouTube. It is very difficult, and so truly, genuinely, I love making this content. But if you like what I'm doing here, please make sure you like, comment, subscribe, all that good YouTuber stuff. And if you want to support this channel, I have a couple different ways you can do that. The most direct way that I can give to you, and you can support this channel in the process, is by purchasing one of my books. I've written a Yule story and a Glastonbury Tourist, and those are both available on Amazon via link down below. The Glastonbury Tourist in particular, I think, is kind of like the combination of a lot of the stuff I've learned in my spiritual journeys around the world, and so all in this beautiful fictional book that's been getting really great reviews. So I hope you check out any of my works. It supports me directly, and then I have a Patreon as well if that's something you wish to do. Regardless, any way you can support this channel and my work is greatly appreciated. But with that, let's go ahead and continue this exploration into the beauty of Sedona. A lot of people talk about the rocks here and how the rocks can absorb your anxieties. And so I've seen a lot of people, just laying out on the rocks, meditating, and it's very common. And so I think that's where you could consider this place very spiritual, is because in most places in America, most places are very Christian or very atheist, and so you don't get a lot of people openly practicing any form of spirituality. Whereas here, it's definitely not frowned upon. And I think that's definitely where the similarities to Glastonbury come in, is that you can basically be anywhere here in Sedona and do anything weird and hippie and spiritual, and no one's really going to question it. And so I think for America, that is very rare. And so if you're looking for a massive area to just practice your spirituality, I think this is a really wonderful place to do it. But truly, genuinely, my report, my reflection on my time in Sedona, it's about to rain the last couple of days, so I don't know how much more I'm going to be able to actually explore. But standing in places like this is a Kachina woman right next to me here, and there's just this lovely little cave with, basically an altar in it. And then you just have this beautiful view of the valley. There's one of the vortexes back here, one of the main vortexes. You can see the other two in the distance here. There's Bell Rock, there's Cathedral Rock, the cow pies are over there. If I have any funny critique of Sedona, I think some of the names are really silly, and I think the fact that Western European explorers came here and they named everything, and so you have these really beautiful magical places, and one of them is called the cow pies because it looks like a pile of cow shit, and it's like, I'm sure the natives have much more beautiful names for these places. So at this time here, so Kachina Woman being right next to the canyon, which is one of the main energy vortexes. I've seen most of them. I still need to see Cathedral Rock as far as the main ones. And I can definitely say there's something to them. And definitely listening to people come up here and discuss like, whoa, it's just so beautiful. One of the things I definitely want to note is in every place I've been that feels special, the rocks feel very face-like. And so I'm looking at one right here. I'll try to get on footage. All the rocks around these areas typically look very human. And so you can really feel like gods in the rocks, ancestors in the rocks, spirits in the rocks, I think, in many of these special places. It's certainly not my environment. I'm way too pale for a place like this. But if you're looking for like a pilgrimage, a spiritual pilgrimage, I definitely see Sedona as being on that list. I really wanted to mention Shaman's Cave, so I wasn't able to actually record in there just because of situations. It was really tight space, but I'll put up some footage for you here. So of all the sites I visited, all the energy vortexes and everything like that, I think Shaman's Cave, Kachina Woman, and then the cow pies have been my favorite. And Shaman's Cave is so special because there's not a lot of stories tied to it. It's very limited. In fact, it's actually called Robber's Roost, but I've seen it's listed as Shaman's Cave, and I can find some mentionings of it online. But man, I hope you can see it in this footage. Just really special space. Oh, hi, Herbie. But yeah, Shaman's Cave is got this big giant window. I think it kind of faces the sunrise. Far as we know, it's not man-made, but you can tell ceremonies have been had in there, at least in the current era. It's all like black in the roof from like fires that have been had in there. And the way it echoes is incredible. I was like, man, I wish I had a drum or a flute. And so I think it'd just be really cool to have a ceremony in there. And yeah, it was just, that was towards the end of my trip here. And everything kind of came together in that moment for me. You know, we just had the ceremony, went up to Shaman's Cave the next day, and it was just like, whoa, this place is just like, you can feel the energy. And so when talking about the energy vortexes of Sedona, they do exist. I think it takes a little bit to kind of tune into them, but you can kind of see it over here. Like this rock wall kind of just comes together in this circle. And because of the way that, I mean, it's just special, you know, all these rocks are sandstone. They're cut with wind, and they all have very facial features. Like they all look like animals, they all look like faces. And then you just have the way it all kind of swirls together. You can kind of see the energy vortexes, and I can really see that at Shaman's Cave. Like the energy just feels like it kind of swirls in there and then shoots out that window. And so I'm not actually that much of like a woo-woo person. I find I'm very grounded when it comes to spirituality and compared to like other people. But there is something to this nature. There is something to the energy vortexes. It's a little bit more subtle, but I think the more you kind of stay here, the more you walk around, the more you experience, the more you feel, the more you let go, the more you're able to feel them. So yes, there is something to the energy vortexes here in Sedona. So we've actually arrived at the end of my trip here in Sedona, so I figured I'd share with you my final thoughts. Obviously, I didn't expect the weather to be like this. I expected a lot more sun, but luckily I did get a few days. Coming here with so much snow, I mean, there's still snow on top of some of these mountains here a week later. But I have to admit, when I first came to Sedona, I didn't know what to think. It's been a really interesting journey. I hope you've enjoyed this footage and coming along with me. I definitely want to thank Jason and Patty, my close friends that I met in Ecuador, for inviting me to come here. I wouldn't have been able to do it otherwise. And I wouldn't have been able to make this video sharing with you the magic of Sedona. I definitely have my critiques and things to say about it, and I've been saying it in this video, but I think sitting here in this final moment, just looking at the beauty of these mountains and the beauty of the red rock, I think everything kind of came together as we had a little ceremony. It was actually just right over here. I can see the spot we had the ceremony in. And what we ended up doing is just having a little sacred space. I'll show you a little footage here. And it was just in the morning. We climbed up in the dawn. And yeah, we just kind of communed with nature. And I think it all kind of came together then is, you know, scoot aside all the chakra readings, the aura projections, and all the kind of catchy stuff that's, you know, to me, not as important with spirituality. They have their place, but in a place like Sedona, as I've been saying throughout this video, it's about the nature. And I received a really clear messaging from the ritual we did when communing with the rocks and looking at everything is nature is a powerful, powerful teacher. And we can sit here, we can talk about the gods. You know, we invoked Father Sky, Mother Earth. You know, I invoked Odin and Bridget and all these gods. And to me, I'm really starting to see the gods as teachers. Like I think, you know, we can look at all the gods in the world, and I think there's a lot of great teachers. And I think then there's these kind of primordial forces like Mother Earth and Father Sky and these very elemental things, the spirit of water, the spirit of fire. You know, that's definitely stuff I've picked up from my explorations into shamanism. But putting all those things together after years of studying paganism, years of studying spirituality and shamanism now, and just exploring and experiencing the world, when sitting in the middle of the beauty of Sedona and performing this ceremony, the message I got is that life is a gift, and we are manifestations of nature. We are this tiny droplet in time that is allowed to experience the world unlike any other living being that we know. There's birds in the sky. There's dogs down here in the water. There's, you know, animals. There's snakes. There's lizards. There's you know, all the living things, and there's the trees, and then there's the rock and the stone and the stories that are tied to them. But of all the living things on this planet, we're allowed to experience it on a whole different level. We're allowed to feel the joy. We're allowed to taste the wind, allowed to create, allowed to experience, allowed to share, allowed to sing. And this beautiful gift of life is something that we as humans have been battling for so long. And I think we are in such a magical time. There is still suffering in this world. There always will be. But we have never lived in a time so abundant as now. Now, this abundance, I think, is eventually going to bite us in the butt. I think we probably need to come into more balance. I think we're really starting to see that in this world. But when it comes to the experience of living, we have never lived in better times as far as we know. The fact that I was able to hop on a plane and come down here and experience Sedona, yet living somewhere so far away. The fact that I've seen so many beautiful countries and know so many wonderful and beautiful people. We live in a beautiful time with hardship, with caveats. But this gift of life that we've been given, that's what I feel here in Sedona. That's the lesson I've been taught, is this world is just so amazingly beautiful, and we should feel so lucky to live in it and to be allowed to experience it. I don't think I could live in Sedona. I don't think Sedona is a place where you think about living, but I do think it's a place that is worth pilgrimaging to. As long as you kind of come into it with this open mind that's about nature, you eat the expensive hippie food, you go to the crystal shop and all that, but at the end of the day, it's about this. That's what I've been saying in this whole video. Spirituality, paganism, I think we overcomplicate it. I think that's where I can critique the crystal shops and things like that, and all the touristy things here, touristy spirituality. To me, it's about returning to simplicity. It's about returning our own mindset, our own souls, to that base level where we can fully embrace and love this world and each other. And Sedona is a good place for that. And so I think that's the best way I can end this video. And one thing if I left it in the video, like one thing I was really hoping to find here myself is the spirit of creativity again. I lost it. It just poof disappeared on me. And something all came together after that ceremony. Everything simplified for me. And I'm just excited to record again. Excited to share with you this world. Excited to share with you mythology and history, spirituality and belief. So it's good to be back. And this is a good video to return. So I'm excited to just take you along with me on beautiful hikes, sharing with you the beauty of this world, and sharing with you my love of history, belief, and mythology. Thank you so much, and I'll see you in the next video here at the Wisdom of Odin.